7.1, discussion about Portsmouth High School graduation steering committee. If anyone in our audience does not know, that Portsmouth High School has they're calling it a steering committee for graduation on what they're going to do because of COVID-19. I had my attention drawn to it because there are no parents or an adult or an administration member or school committee member from Little Compton on it. I found it very disappointing that we were not asked. We were not a representative person on there. We do have a senior on it, Danny McKinnon. Anybody knows Danny, he's the best, a wonderful student and a wonderful kid. But I am disappointed that there is not a parent on there or an adult, or we were asked to have someone on there. So consequently, Rita, being the best Portsmouth high school liaison that this town has ever had, went to their meeting last week and asked about why there was not representation for Little Compton on there. And Rita, would you like to take it from there and tell us what happened when you asked that question?
Sure. Yeah, the superintendent was giving a report. This was last Tuesday by Zoom, and the superintendent mentioned the high school plans. I had been made aware about the steering committee and knew that we didn't have representation, but I kindly asked about Little Compton representation in that committee, and I was told by the principal that there was one student and no other adults, administrators, school committee members, etc., as Patrick has pointed out. I kindly suggested that we are available, that there are adults in Little Compton, there's a school committee, there are administrators, teachers, parents who would be willing to help, and we're here in support. And the principal said that they were all set and didn't need any support. So we left it at that.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you for representing us in such a class fashion when you were at those meetings. I was in that meeting in the audience, and you represented yourself and Little Compton very well. Again, I was disappointing in Portsmouth and specifically Principal Amaral. When you asked him that question, he had one word for you. The answer was no, and there was no other feedback. There's no other discussion on it. So I found that unacceptable to be treated in such a way by Portsmouth High School with all our students over there and the tuition money that we send over there. We should have better representation than that. So just disappointing in my eyes. Any discussion on that one? All right. Not seeing any. We'll go down to 7.2, discussion about a high school RFP. John McNamee, could you give us an update on the RFP that we need to send out to solicit bids for our high school students?
Okay, so I started to draft that RFP, and the question now would be on timing. I think when we last met as a committee, we looked at getting that out probably this summer. I think it's going to be interesting timing-wise, based on the uncertainty of what's going to happen in the upcoming year. So we may want to revisit the timing on that, but what I can do is I'll have a completed draft at the next school committee meeting that we can go through, and then determining at what point in time we want to release the draft. I think we want to be able to be in a position to have the maximum response to that. And we want to put it in the forefront of those that are going to respond to it. So we should look at the timing on that. But I suspect that we should be able to get that out in the fall and get an appropriate response before the spring.
So John, you said there's a timing issue. Specifically, what's the issue with timing?
Well, nobody knows what the school year is going to look like next year in terms of distance learning and whatnot. budgets are really in kind of a disarray for FY21. Many school districts, I think, will wind up being level funded. There's some discussion about state aid being held consistent with what people are getting in FY20. That's going to cause some significant impacts on a lot of districts. So I think they need to be able to sort those things out before they respond to an RFP that's going to bring in some more students to the district.
So if potential towns want to have our kids in their school and they have the seats to do it, why would they have a problem at, getting our wonderful kids and over $1 million in their budget? What would be the, what would stop them from doing that?
It's the social distancing at this point. Whether those schools have enough room to be able to provide the education with social distancing. There's also some discussion about will there be remote or distance learning for middle and high school, and just in district with social distancing for elementary schools. So there are a lot of things that are just up in the air, and I think Lori can certainly weigh in on this. There's been no direction from Rhode as to what the beginning of the school year is going to look like at this point in time. So with all that uncertainty, it may be difficult for school committees and administrators to focus in on a proposal to add more students. I think it'll sort itself out once we get some more direction from Rhode, but I don't think we want to let that RFP out until we have that guidance in place. So, and we certainly should have that by midsummer. I would assume that by July we should have a good idea of what the September year will look like.
I agree with John. There's so much is up in the air. The most recent call with the governor's office was less than a week ago that I was on with Kevin Gallagher, one of her senior staff members. And there are so many different scenarios that no one can really predict. And releasing an RFP in a time of such uncertainty is just not optimal. And so hopefully as midsummer approaches, we have a firmer grasp of what the 2021 school year will look like. But right now, a lot is up in the air. I will keep you, the school committee, and the community in the loop every step of the way.
So I understand that. Our contract with Portsmouth, if I'm not mistaken, expires September of 22. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Yeah.
So that's a long time from May of 20. And you would think that schools would know that by that time we'll have a vaccine and the kids will be back in their seats. Unless I'm missing something. I mean, I understand there's uncertainty now and, what's it going to be like? I get it. So are you saying that it costs more to educate a child online virtually than it is to put them in a seat, John?
No, it's just that I think in terms of what that district is going to have to offer, I think is going to be it's going to be more appropriate at some point when we know what education is going to look like going forward. And some of them, if there's space issues in terms of if they have excess space, may not be as much of a problem. But if by bringing in the students, it's going to cause some issues with social distancing, they may take a look at what the impact would be.
Absolutely.
And make a decision as to whether they want to reply to the RFP or not.
Thank you. Any other comments on that?
I do, Patrick.
Sure, go ahead.
Rita, yeah. We are expecting to hear like an overview of each of the high schools that we are sending an RFP to. Do we have that scheduled at one of our meetings? So we'll get a complete academic review, you know, classroom size, sports, others. Is that scheduled?
That's premature, but I would say once the RFPs roll in, there will be a public discussion of each one.
I think for this committee, I just want to make sure that we're reaching out to the appropriate high schools and that this committee has a full sense of security about that we're going to the right high schools.
Mhm.
I don't know how others feel, but I'd like more information, particularly on some of the schools where we're seeking.
Patrick,
Yes.
once the RFP is issued, I'm assuming the schools that respond will, we will request that information from them.
I think that's how it usually works. John McNamee?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be correct. You know, we are looking, I believe, all districts within a certain radius, mile radius of Little Compton.
Are we able to cross state borders?
It can happen. Yeah, it is possible.
Jana, did you want to say something? I think you're on mute, Jana. You take her off mute.
Jana, you're on, yeah.
The later we can send out these RFPs, the better, I think,
Yes.
because there's just so much up in the air. And right now, schools are going to be very scared, and they're going to take a conservative approach. And I think we really, as long as we can wait, the better.
I agree.
You have a question, Patrick?
I don't see it.
I don't think so.
I don't see a question.
Is it possible for students to attend different high schools based on pathways they may offer and student career choices?
Is that on the chat?
It's on the Q&A.
Oh, the Q&A. I can't get
Yeah.
that Q&A.
It
I
is
see it,
possible.
I see it.
We basically have school choice in the state of Rhode
Right
Island for
there.
high schools. Whoops. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Kim, can you hear me?
I don't see that.
Patrick, it's right, Patrick? It's right at the top of your screen. Q&A.
I can answer live. Did you get it?
Got it. Thank you.
Can Kim hear me? Can someone bring her in as a panelist?
So,
Yes,
so we
she
had
can
a,
hear you.
so we had
Okay.
we had a question. What was that first question, Polly?
The question is, oh, it's gone. Oh, wait.
Ah.
Sorry.
don't see
Is
it
it possible for students to attend different high schools based on pathways they
Right.
may offer and student career choices?
All right.
Ab-
let's just-
Absolutely, I can answer that. Rhode Island did flip the switch for school choice relative to CTE, Career and Technical Education. So right now we have a Little Compton student at Tiverton High School in their drafting program. And we have students at the Newport Career Academy as well, part of Rogers. We also have students who have elected to go to the Met in Newport. So yes, there is school choice in the state of Rhode Island, especially as it pertains to CTE programs, Career and Technical Education. A student can go to any high school if they have a pathway that a local high school does not offer. And like I said, we have a student at Tiverton High, we pay that tuition. We have students at Middletown High, we have students at Rogers, and we have students at the Met.
Thank you. So,
Now, Patrick, those tuitions are going to be a little bit higher than what we're paying for Portsmouth High School. Those tuitions generally are going to run in that 16 to 17,000 range per student.
It's expensive, yeah.
All right. And someone asked a question when the Portsmouth contract is up. I think we answered that. September 22. I don't see any other questions on here.
Yes, then on the chat, there's, Kim Cannon has asked, so are
Yes.
all districts within this radius invited to participate?
John McNamee?
Yes. Yeah, we'll be sending it out to all districts.
Could this be part of the RFP? What's that question? I don't get it. Could what be part of the RFP? I missed that one. I'd have to explain that one better to me.
Let's see that one.
Okay. I'm going to go on. We can go back. So just keep asking your questions in that chat and we'll get to those or the question and answer. 7.3, discussion about graduation ceremonies at Wilbur McMahon School. Superintendent, I'm sure you're going to answer this question for us. And I'm sure it's going to be inclusive. I'm sure you're going to ask parents and school committee members and you're going to include everyone on your decision, right?
Well, everyone, we don't have many options, to tell you the truth, with social distancing directives coming from the state level. So we have a few plans. We have a plan A, definitely, that doesn't involve, any sort of interaction, because Kevin Gallagher from the governor's office last Thursday definitely put the kibosh on live ceremonies of any type, because there's no school that just has 5 kids. So we ran all sorts of possible scenarios by him, and I did share some of the documents with you, the school committee, the guidance that we received from Rhode about graduation ceremonies from the commissioner and also from the governor's office. And the plan A is something car-based. We have 27 8th grade graduates, and we would have a parade around, I think you call it the Pikes Peak, around the Commons. And we've reached out to the police and given them a heads up that this is a tentative idea, and possibly the cars could be decorated. There would be graduation swag that would be distributed. Staff members would be obviously in compliance with social distancing parameters that have been set. We're likely still going to be in phase 1, maybe a little bit of phase 2 by then. There may be a stop for photos that will be heavily supervised by staff. So a backdrop of some sort, maybe it'll be Wilbur or something. I'm just throwing that out there. So I do know that Principal Whip and her staff have been very open and welcoming of any and all ideas and feedback. And parents have been pretty forthcoming with ideas. And so, like I said, there aren't a lot of options. And most of them are car-based, just like Portsmouth High School going to the polo grounds, and or various high schools and middle schools heading to a field or one of the drive-ins. So we do have a plan A, and we also have a rain date. So we're just starting to firm up dates. We will have the usual award ceremony, the academic awards, the civic awards, and that will be done virtually. But the graduation ceremony will be people getting out of their homes. It'll be mid-June, and likely just like Portsmouth and all the other high schools in the state, the automobile will definitely be central to our plan.
Thank you. So, obviously my concern is the representation of all the parents of the kids that are in 8th grade, and make sure they're getting good communication, and everyone's being heard, and all ideas are on the table, and there's no mystery to what's going on here at Wilbur with graduation.
Full transparency. I mean, parents, like I said, have been very forthcoming. One even contacted me, and she had some concerns regarding social distancing and safety. And so, and I know parents are freely contacting Mrs. Whip. She sends out her weekly community update. The Parent Square Forum allows for two-way communication at point of need. So our 27 families are they're definitely part of all of this, and our communication modes have been frequent and thorough. So by the time June 17th, 16th is the ceremony, the award ceremony. The 17th is the tentative date for the graduation. The 18th is the rain date. The 19th is the last day of school. Well before any of that rolls around, parents will be apprised of the plan.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to 8.1 public input, which will segue right into some of these questions we have. And it's back to the high school RFP. And it says, could this be part of the RFP not committing to a specific number of students attending the school? I would say Mr. McNamee or John Anderson, you want to take that question?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. The school committee can tailor the RFP pretty much whatever way it wants to. I mean, one way to do this is to say two options. One option is that all of our students would come to your school, give us a price. The other would be a per pupil, kind of like the difference between going to a restaurant and ordering a la carte or ordering a buffet. And, you know, I think that when the RFP is written, and I agree with Ms. Porter's suggestion that under the current circumstances, waiting is better, but that it should be done with as many options for the school committee to choose from at that time.
Great, thank you. So the next question, does the RFP go to a Massachusetts school or only Rhode Island schools? I think we might have answered that one.
Yeah, all of them.
John, what do you know of that? John Anderson?
I think you've answered it in the sense that the state of Rhode Island places students at Massachusetts schools on a regular basis right now, in terms of special education programs and so forth. There's nothing that precludes the state of Rhode Island from a district in the state of Rhode Island with Rhode's blessing to place students in Massachusetts. Rhode gives that blessing to all sorts of schools in Massachusetts right now.
Thank you. And the last one, schools could give a per pupil cost and students could choose their school. Any comment on that, John?
I think that gets a little bit more complicated. Essentially what that person is asking for is a voucher system. And the problem that you have with the voucher system is that there may be some market distortions in that some people who are not taking advantage of the public schools would simply come in to take the voucher, which means that it would actually drive your education costs up. So I would be very careful about that approach. But again, the school committee has as much flexibility as it wants to through this process.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions on there. Any other questions from the committee? Okay. So public input on agenda items, a topic for future agendas. I will look at the chat screen to see if there's any. And we'll go down to our action items. 9.1, consider, discuss, and vote to approve the shared services agreement for 2020 via roll call. Am I tabling this again?
We are tabling this again. We can
Oh.
thank the shutdown. It's been on the back burner for the town and for us. We've had other issues in the forefront.
So this is the last table card I'm going to use on this one. Just so you know. We will have this next time. 9.2, consider, discuss, and send a letter to Portsmouth High School committee via roll call. Do I have I'm going to get a motion in a second, then we can discuss it. Do I have a motion? I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
So this kind of segues from our discussion we just had. about the steering committee and the representation of Little Compton at Portsmouth High School. Does this committee have any thoughts on expressing our dissatisfaction with Portsmouth High School and how they are treating our representation? Or is it just me?
Pat, can I ask, are we discussing the draft of the letter that was circulated, that was written by you to Portsmouth? Is it that particular letter that we're discussing?
John Anderson, how do I answer that question?
I'm sorry. The answer would be Ed, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I think you made your dissatisfaction pretty plain. And I agree. I think there should be a parent on the committee.
We have, what, 10% of their student body? If we had 10% of the committee, it wouldn't sway a vote. It would just give a perspective from a Little Compton person's viewpoint. So I can't think of a good example, but you know, we travel a long way. There are different things, and I'm sure Portsmouth people do not consider when discussing something that might be very important to a Little Compton person. And I don't know if they're taking official votes or whatever, but if we were 10%, we would not change their vote. They would just hear another perspective. And I think that's only fair. We give them, you know, over $1 million. Our kids go over there and represent us and them very well. They're part of their community, then make us feel like we're part of their community. I think that's only fair. I don't think that's unreasonable. And more so, we weren't even given a reason why we weren't allowed on the committee. I find that unacceptable as well.
Any other thoughts from the committee?
Just another comment from the meeting last week. Their assistant superintendent reported out on the successes they're having with distance learning. And one of the key factors she identified is collaboration and communication. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? That it's so much about collaborating and communicating with others that leads to success. And we can't really be that way regarding this issue. So I did call that out in a comment to the chairwoman of the committee. She didn't read my comment to the group, but I would think that more collaboration would work well in this situation too.
Jana's still on mute. Take her off mute.
I feel like this is the latest in a series of things that Portsmouth High School has done to marginalize us. And I think it's really important that we respond.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much. So I have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yeah, Alan? Paula, you are muted.
Sorry, I was trying to comment before I voted. I did see a couple small grammatical errors in the letter. So can we vote on it and clear up those errors all at once?
I do want to make this clear that we're voting on a letter. We may not be voting on that letter.
Okay.
So I
Fair
think with the feeling I get from everyone here is that there needs to be a response that we're all feeling.
Yes.
That letter that was shared from the superintendent was a draft. So this vote is to send a letter of dissatisfaction to.
I didn't write it. I didn't write it, but I didn't write it, but I shared it.
All right, so we're clear on that. So I have a motion, I have a second to send a letter of dissatisfaction to Portsmouth via roll call. Go ahead.
Polly Allen,
Aye.
Rita Kenahan,
Aye.
Jana Porter,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Patrick McHugh.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. 9.3, consider, discuss, and vote to approve transportation RFP via roll call. So let's get into the underbelly of transportation, Mr. McNamee.
Well, talk about timing for an RFP. This is probably the worst timing to send out an RFP for transportation, but we had no choice. If you recall, we were in the 5th year of our transportation contract with First Student. We joined the consortium of East Bay districts and sent out a RFP back in early February. Included in that was Little Compton, Tiverton, Portsmouth, Bristol, Warren, and Barrington. So there are 5 that were under the auspices of this RFP. We engaged a consultant that has been used in the past to provide a resource to get out the RFP, because these RFPs for transportation are very voluminous and include tons of information. As a result, the RFP was issued sometime in mid-February. Responses were initially received. Questions were then taken for a 2 or 3 week period. Responses were going to be received sometime in mid-March, at which point most asked for an extension of time. So we didn't wind up getting responses back until April 30th. What transpired was that the 2 current contractors for the 5 districts either had First Student or they had Ocean State Transportation. First Student voted on, submitted a bid for the districts they were currently serving, as did Ocean State. So we did receive, as all the other districts did receive, is just 1 bid. Now, obviously, when you receive 1 bid, it kind of takes the competitive nature of it out. It appears that I have found out in other districts where, for example, First Student was asked to bid on another district. They decided to decline on that because I think they were saying that they wouldn't be able to get the buses because the bus manufacturers were being shut down. So there were a lot of issues. So the long and short of it is we have 1 bid. The increase was 13.86% based on the RFP proposal. That RFP proposal was a 3-year with 2 one-year options. And years 2 and 3 were going to be at a cost of living increase, but no less than 1.5%. They came back with 2 alternatives. Alternative 1, which was eliminating the cost of living and fixing the increases in year 2 and 3 at 3%. And the second alternative was eliminating cost of living, fixing it at 3%, and including buses that could be over 10 years old. We had a discussion, we had a meeting with the consultant yesterday, and we received his recommendation in terms of where we should go in terms of the RFP. And he is suggesting that we go with alternative one, which is elimination of the cost of living. That reduces the initial year increase from 13.86 to 10.73, and using a 3% in year 2 and 3. We had a lengthy discussion about the double-digit increases, and many of the districts, they range anywhere from 12 to 16% increases. And I think a lot of it is recouping some of the costs that they're not receiving for the cancellation of a third of the year in FY20. So at this point, I would propose that we accept alternate one, which is a 10.73% increase with 3% increase in years 2 and 3. I also prepared what the impact would be on the budget. So we would be looking at an additional cost to the district over the budget. If you recall, we budgeted a 5% increase. We would be looking at about $22,000 as an increase.
So John, this is going to be an obvious question. We saved how much? $120,000 this year?
We saved,
On transportation.
yeah, we saved about a third of that. So we probably saved somewhere in the neighborhood of, 120, 130,000. Yep.
So 130,000 plus, and they're asking for an extra 22,000 in this deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're asking for, if you look back at the proposal that they gave to the superintendent prior to the RFP, they were looking at a 5% annual increase for a 2-year period for an extension.
So they're asking for an extra 5% in that first year.
A little bit over 5%, but that's going forward. That's 5%,
Yeah.
As an ongoing amount. There's 10% per 10.73%. So it's obvious that they're trying to catch up with some of the revenue that they've lost. Interestingly enough, First Student proposal was in accordance with the RFP without making any changes. They do have some suggested contract changes, which we're going to discuss with the consultant, but we're not going to really agree to those. But Ocean State Transportation made their bid contingent upon changes in the contract, which is interesting. One of the changes that Ocean State was looking for was that in the event that there was a elimination of a bus for any reason, the district would be responsible for paying 50% of the cost of that bus. So if we decided that you were going to eliminate a bus, or in this case where you were going to cancel school for a period of time, you would still be on the hook for 50% of the cost of that bus.
So what are we going to vote on here? Are we voting on all those little intricacies in this contract, or are we just voting to approve a transportation RFP? Just the RFP, right?
No, the RFP has already been responded to. So we're voting to accept First Student's proposal using alternative one pricing, which is the 10.73% with the 3% increase in year 2 and 3.
All right, so what I'm reading is consider, discuss, and vote to approve the transportation RFP. Is that correct? That doesn't sound right.
Well, it's the response to the RFP.
That's the response. So do I need to amend this John Anderson, help me out.
John, you need to unmute.
Sorry, my apologies. I'm going to begin by apologizing to John McNamee in the sense that I have not had an opportunity to speak to him about this. At this point, my suggestion, John, how long is the bid open for? Their prices are fixed for what period of time?
I'd have to check. I don't know if it's 90 days, or I'd have to check the RFP.
Okay, I mean, I would like, I'm requesting the opportunity to have this table so I could have a conversation with John, with the superintendent, because I'm really, really concerned about some of the practices that I'm hearing that are being engaged here. I will point out that First Student is owned by a company called First Group. First Group is publicly traded on the London Stock Exchange. On March 10th, First Group announced in response to the demands of one of its shareholders that it would be selling its First Student unit in the United States. It was reported that in a press release that was issued by First Group, the parent corporation, that they were engaging in revenue recovery activities here in the United States. The fact that you are not getting competitive bids, frankly, I just got off the phone with, and the reason I was late for your meeting, and I apologize, was because I was on with another district that is seeing a similar, I'll bid your town, you bid my town. If there are agreements to rotate bids, and I am certainly not saying that there are agreements to I'll bid here and you bid there, you know, that raises some legal issues that frankly we are better addressed with the school committee in executive session.
Right. But one thing is certain, it is a duopoly.
Well, and the other issue is trying to get transportation for next year at this point in time. I mean, in the event that we had to go out and try to get transportation, it's going to be a very difficult process, especially with the standpoint if the manufacturing companies for buses close, the ability to buy buses. Now, clearly, Little Compton with only 6 buses versus other districts, for example, in Lincoln, we have like 30+ buses. It's a little bit of a different story, but I think on the call the other day with all the business managers that were involved in this, it was frustrating because we realized that the competition was eliminated in this process. But at what point, you know, you've got to do something about transporting kids in the upcoming year. And whether you're going to get a little bit better pricing than this, you may or may not. But at this point, I'm not sure that we have a lot of alternatives at this point. There's probably, it's very difficult to prove that you know, there was any collusion, certainly within the bus companies, but it's very strange that, you know, they only bid on the existing contracts. We did know that they were for sale, that had been going on for a while. I actually talked to First Student and confirmed that fact. Interestingly enough, they're the most profitable out of that group. So I think what they're doing is trying to certainly solidify revenues, because the cost, the selling price will be based on certainly their ability to generate the revenues. But, you know, it's kind of a tough situation, John, in terms of, you know, we got to be able to transport these kids in September.
And I appreciate that, John. And again, I'm apologizing to you for not having an opportunity to speak to you sooner about this. All I'm asking is, and the reason I asked the question, how long the bids were fixed, is that I'm simply requesting that we discuss this in executive session within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
That works.
You okay with that, John McNamee?
Yeah, I think we have time. I'll go back to the RFP and double check, but I know I can probably email the consultant and just make sure that that's the case, so.
Ed Bowen, you have a question?
Just
Comment?
a quick question with respect to the timeline for all of this. The final year of this contract would be academic year 22-23, and would that also perhaps be the first year of a different high school if the school committee voted to change high schools? And if so, does this RFP, is it based on the present routes that we have? If we were to change high schools, would that fall under this RFP?
No, that more than likely that would change the busing cost because of the routes that were bid were obviously to Portsmouth High School. So if there were mileage changes and that they would have to take that in consideration when they're looking at redoing the bid. But I believe.
Sorry, John. Is there any financial penalty for us switching high schools for that final year?
No.
I have another question. It says, can the current arrangement be extended for 1 year? Is that busing or is that the high school? That was my question to the question.
Well, that's a good question. They may be willing to extend it for 1 year. The problem is that, and that's what Portsmouth did do. The question is, it does fly in the face of the procurement requirements because you can't have contracts that go out more than 3 years. We did a 3+2. I don't know whether that would comply with those requirements. I would imagine that if it's a 1 year bid, that they may come back with maybe a higher percentage. Because their ability to spread the cost over a longer period of time would make it more economical for them.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. I'm going to table that. 9.4, consider, discuss, and vote on attendance policy amendments. Second read via roll call. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, it's Rita.
Discussion. Ed, go ahead.
I'm happy to answer any questions or do any, looking at the notes at the foot of this actually is the third time that it's been on an agenda. Did a number of things, but mostly related to intervention in terms of absences, but the policy that we had regarding attendance in the past was insufficient. And so this fleshes it out, and Mrs. Whip did a great job on it.
Third time's the charm on this one. I have a motion and a second, and can we get a vote via roll call?
I move.
I don't think we heard that, Mariah. Via roll call, a vote for roll call.
Jana Porter,
Aye.
Rita Kennahan,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Polly Allen,
Aye.
Patrick McHugh.
Aye. Attendance policy amendments have been accepted. 9.5, consider, discuss, and vote on professional development policy, second read. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, Rita.
All right, discussion, Ed.
This provides additional financial inducements to faculty to get advanced degrees and provides for a fund for tuition reimbursement. It's a pool from which they can apply for reimbursement for certain courses that are approved.
Any other discussion, further discussion on this one? We get a vote via roll call, please, Mariah?
Polly Allen,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Rita Kennahan,
Aye.
Jana Porter,
Aye.
Patrick McHugh.
Aye. Professional development passes on policy. Thank you. 9.6, consider, discuss, and vote to match the 2020 Doris Simmons Scholarship amount 150 to bring total award to 300. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. This is the third year we've done this.
Yes.
I think it's only appropriate. Any other discussion? Want to vote via roll call, please?
Polly Allen,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Rita Kennahan,
Aye.
Jana Porter,
Aye.
Patrick McHugh.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. 9.7, consider, discuss, and vote to approve any request for information from administration on a legal counsel via roll call. Anyone? Take a quick look at the questions. I don't see any more here. We are going to take a vote to enter into executive session. Do I have a motion to do that?
We have a motion. It's Rita.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Can I get a vote via roll call, please?
Polly Allen,
Aye.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Jana Porter,
Aye.
Rita Kennahan,
Aye.
Patrick McHugh.
Aye, we're going to enter into, I forgot to say this, 42-46-5A2. Aye. So we are going into executive session. Thank you. We'll be back after.
John,
Do I need to stay on for this? So do I need to stay? This is how,
Does John Anderson need to stay on, he was asking?
no, does this continue on to executive session by staying on?
No, we have a different link for executive session.
Oh, okay, so I need to jump to the other link.
We
Yes,
don't have to go to another link.
I
Okay, I
believe-
understand now. Okay,
I
thank
got
you.
you. That should be in your email.
Thank you. So I need to get out of this.
Were you saying something, Lori? You're still in the call, but you're muted.
Nice being not the last one back in the meeting, huh?
I'm here, but I can't find myself.
We can't see you either.
We can't see you either, Rita.
Up.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that. Get you
Yeah.
guys back on the screen here. Just keep in mind that we are live still.
Thank you.
Oh, there you are. That's fine. You will in a sec. Yep.
One, two.
I'm here, but I don't have a picture.
All right, we're in open session. Notification of votes. There were no votes taken in executive session. I'll consider a vote to seal the minutes in executive session via roll call. Do I have a motion?
You have a motion, it's Rita.
Second?
Second.
All right. Vote for via roll call.
Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Rita Kennahan,
Aye.
Jana Porter,
Aye.
Polly Allen,
Aye.
Patrick McHugh,
Aye. What's this? 12-1. Consider a vote to adjourn via roll call. All right, via roll call to adjourn.
sure. Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Motion?
Oh, I'll
Motion.
make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Go ahead, roll call.
okay, Ed Bowen,
Aye.
Rita Kennahan,
Aye.
Jana Porter,
Aye.
Polly Allen,
Aye.
Patrick McHugh.
Aye. This meeting is over.
Good night.
Patrick.
Good night.
Good night,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
I
Take
guess.
care.
Seeing everybody.